Kelly. We the best music.
All right. First of all, I'm so excited. All of you guys have joined today. I'm still letting people in. So to me, this topic is, what we do. It's culture. Basketball is just kind of the way we instill it, I guess, a way to live, a way to work, those types of things. So I was talking to Coach Belcher earlier about how excited I was about it. We all have culture in our personal life, in our programs. It's good or it's bad. It's probably adjusting always, healthy, unhealthy, and there's tons of variables that go into it and to define it. Today's panel consists of a group of people I've watched for 20 years, met them through various situations. Coach Tennison was recruiting a player of mine when she was at A&M 20 years ago. That's how I met her. Jill McDill was at Rockwall when I started off, was on the verge of, already had a great program, but was on the verge of state, going to state in the state tournament. So she was in my league every year, and I made sure we played Rockwall every week pretty much because I knew that's what it was going to take for us to get there. Coach Belcher, I was telling him, I met him when he was actually at Plano Senior High as Stan Hicks' assistant. Known Wes for about the same time. I think we were coaching middle school basketball in Plano at the same time 20 years ago. So I've seen all these people build programs, and I know they all have great culture in that program. And not that the rest of you don't, but they're the ones that fell on this one. So not real big on introductions. Sorry, coaches. I know you're all very humble anyway and probably wouldn't want me to announce your millions of wins and things. But all of these coaches, have been to state tournaments and have quality programs. So with that, I want to get started. Before we get to the discussion, I'm going to thank East Bay. You've seen Taz Millis here today. A few of the reps from Dallas possibly on this call. And they've actually supporting this panel. They're going to raffle off a backpack today to those of you that are on the call. So my wife is actually taking everybody's name down off the call. She's going to do an online raffle. We'll announce who gets that backpack at the end. So with that, let's get into our discussion. Thank you, East Bay, for doing that. Thanks, Taz, for setting that up for us. So, coaches, my first question is going to be this, and we'll just go through it real quick. I'm going to start with you, Jill. Just give me 2 words that you think would define your program's culture.
I think if I had to choose 2, we really have 5 words that define our culture, and I'll get to that later. But if I had to choose just 2, I think I would go with team, because we're always going to put the team first, and the other one being excellence. That we want to do everything with excellence that we can do, whether it be practices, games, or just off the court and everything. So I think if I just had to choose 2 words, I'd go with team and excellence.
All right. Wes.
And hey, let me say this. I appreciate you including me as one of the coaches that's been to a lot of state tournaments. And that is a true statement, just never as a coach. Been to a lot of them, but I appreciate that. I would say for us, and we have several things that we talk about that we like to instill in our kids, but I would say if we had to pick 2, it would just be a competitiveness and really high character. The competitiveness part, really, we want our opponent to know that every time they get on the floor with us, that they had to earn the win. I mean, if they beat us, they're going to have to absolutely earn it. So we want guys that are going to play incredibly hard, that are willing to make winning plays throughout the game. And we define what those winning plays look like. And for some, those things aren't very sexy, but to us, we know that if we do them over and over and over throughout the course of the game, it's going to increase our chances of a positive outcome. We're talking things like getting on the floor, being the first team on the floor for loose balls, drawing charges. We're really big on that. Just doing your job when you have the opportunity to do it. making sure you're blocking out, not blowing defensive assignments, shot selection, taking care of the basketball on the offensive end, just trying to do all of those things at a really, really high level. You know, one thing that, you know, when I was with Rodney years ago, he took us up to Oklahoma to a clinic with Kelvin Sampson. And Coach Sampson made a comment there, and it stuck with me. This is 20 years ago. He said, you know, every team in our conference plays hard, but only a few truly compete. And so that is stuck with me to this day. And you'll see that in our locker room. You'll hear us break out to it. It's really, really important to us. The other thing is just high character. I don't want to be around dudes that aren't going to get it done on the court, that aren't going to play hard, that aren't going to get it done in the classroom. And we're very, very fortunate that we've got some real high character kids in our program. We just want guys that aren't going to embarrass us. They're going to make our program proud. They're going to make their parents proud. They're going to make our school proud. So I would say it's those two things more than anything.
Okay, thank you. Amy.
Oh, I'm kind of in the same boat as Wes. So played for a state championship, but hadn't quite made it there as a coach yet, but still pressing to try to get there. Our two words in our program are intentionally set up. It's toughness and all in. And so I know you're going to talk about pillars to your program, but we define toughness with 4 C's, which it's all character based. I tell my parents I'm a character coach. And basketball is my platform. So that's how I present it to my parents. And I get buy-in because they understand that it's all about character. We're not going to be defined with accolades or scoreboards or things like that. And so I feel like our staff, we do a great job of talking about these 4 C's. All in is about being physically, mentally, and emotionally engaged. And so with that, coupled with our 4 C's, which is confidence, commitment, composure, and concentration. And for me, it's a take off of those 4 things that, again, their character comes through. And so we evaluate games with those through different stats, and it all ties together. But for us, it's all about toughness, and it's all about being all in. And there's some great books. Jay Belis has a great one out on toughness. He's really, really in depth with it. And then another one that was a great one was the Grit by Angela Duckworth. And so that's kind of what we've drawn from, but we've just kind of shortened it to keep it simple for our program.
Okay. And Coach Belcher.
Every day when they come to school and they, you know, we practice early in the morning, we talk about attitude and effort. We want our young ladies to respect one another, have the right attitude every morning when they come to practice. But we're real big on effort. Our leaders, the leaders of our team, they are the ones who start every drill in my workouts. And they set the tone because of their attitude. The leaders of the teams that I lead, like I said, they run every drill. They're the first one in the front of the line. They even set the effort and the attitude in the locker room because the young ladies spend a lot of time together as a family in the locker room. And I believe that attitude carries over onto the floor, especially as I found out working with young ladies. And in our situation in Plano, you know, we had all the different middle schools that had to come together. So the one thing that, you know, I focused on at the very beginning is to get them in the right mindset because they grew up competing against one another. So we spend a lot of time doing team building activities so we can grow their attitude and that they will be all in together. So attitude and effort every day, whether, you know, it's in the locker room, because I'm big about that. I spend a lot of time talking about how's the locker room today? Did you guys get along? Did you have the right attitude? Because I know that carries over from the locker room to the floor.
Okay. So to follow up on that, do you feel your personal culture and your personal life influences the culture of your program? Jill? Wes, I'm going to start with you on this one.
I try to, as much as I can. Yeah, it absolutely has to. I think for the important things in my life, how other people view me is important to me. If it's something really important, so how I'm viewed by others, my parents, my family, my bosses, my mentors. I want to make those people proud. A lot of those people have put a lot of trust in me, so I want to make sure that I'm doing everything I can to make them proud. And contrary to what Coach Millis may think here, I am a man of faith who falls short constantly, and I feel like I'm obligated to God, to give my best, and for the gifts that He's given me, that I'm doing those to my very best at all times. And I'll take a Steve Prefontaine quote that's always stuck with me. To give anything less than your best is to sacrifice the gift. So I want to make sure that every single day, when we go out there in front of these kids, that we're modeling, just giving tremendous effort in everything that we do. And we're trying as best we can to model excellence.
Very good. Amy?
Absolutely. Your greatest teacher is your greatest role model, and it's who you are, not always what you do. But absolutely the best teachers are the best role models. And so with us, our staff, we try to model these character traits every day. We have different quotes of the day that target these 4 things. But absolutely, I feel like we have to model that. So our kids can really see it in action. And so I completely agree that that's who we are is a great, much better teacher than anything that we do. So
yeah, it's what they see, not what we say. So.
Yeah.
Rodney, what about you?
Without question, I'm pretty sure we all do this in some aspect, but our players see everything we do. And we establish our culture by, our routines, our attitude, how we pay attention to details, especially also one big thing is how we treat them and if we care about them. When we have, we celebrate all of their birthdays. We talk about their family at the end of every practice when we circle up. There's something coming up in their family that week. We'll ask the question, so-and-so, what do you have going on in your family this week? And so we try to celebrate everything that they have going on, but we establish that through, our care for them, but our personal culture, without a doubt, I would say that, being disciplined, showing up on time, being organized, caring about them every day, showing concern for their grades and trying to get them help when they need it. So, we'll bring them into the office and talk to them. And if they need help, we try to get them help. So I firmly believe what you do every day with your personal life influences your young ladies that you're working with, at least.
Definitely. Jill?
Absolutely. I think exactly like they've been saying, that you really have to embody your culture. And I think it's really important that you go to battle for that culture every day. And so if you don't fight for that great culture, then you end up tolerating a bad culture. And so you've got to be willing to fight for that. And I know for me, when I ask my kids stuff like today, we're going to have a little Zoom meeting. And when I say, are you doing some little things to get better? I want to be able to look at them and say, I'm getting better. Here's what I'm doing. I'm reading this, or I've watched these, and I've done this and that, and I'm getting outside and working out, or whatever. I want to be able to say I'm doing these things as well. And like someone mentioned, I think it's also important. I mean, for me, I want to think, we talk a lot about being elite. Am I an elite wife? Am I an elite mom? And am I an elite person and coach? And how can I do those little things? So like now, my little girl, she comes to every practice. Our practices are after school. She's in there. And so they see our interactions. And so I want to embody the kind of culture I'm trying to get them to emulate, that we want to show what that looks like every day.
Perfect. I totally believe culture is trickle down. It trickles down from the top. It starts with the head coach. The program has to see you living what you're preaching. For me, it was always success, never rest. That was always basically, what our culture was supposed to be. No matter where you're at, you should try to be successful. If you're sweeping your mother's kitchen floor out, you need to try to do it the best that it's ever been done. And I just feel if you do that in every aspect, you're going to find great results. And Jill, I love that you said you got to fight for your culture every day. Because if you don't, somebody's stealing an inch of it every day. And before you know it, your culture's gone. So appreciate all of those answers. So I know you've all got pillars of your program. Some of them are 3, some of them are 5, some of them may be 20 pillars. But, if you could share, if you've got 5 or so, if you could share maybe the 3 that you think are the most important. And if you got time to share all 5, that's cool too. I'm going to start with Wes on this one.
First of all, I don't, I've stolen a lot through the years, as I know a lot of us have. I don't know that I've got an original thought, but I hope, someone can get something out of this from me today. But one of the things, and a lot of you've already heard this with what Duke has done with Coach Krzyzewski. I had an uncle that worked for the Xerox Corporation years ago, and he went to a conference in Orlando, and he comes back and he hands me a DVD. And it just so happened that at their big corporate conference, they brought Krzyzewski in, Coach K, to talk to the, to their company, who was going through a tough time at the time. And he basically kind of ran them through how he runs things at Duke. And that's kind of stuck with me since. So we kind of take that whole, that FIST principle, trust is the first thing. And I think any organization, any relationship has to be built on that. And if you've got that, you can start really building some special things. But he talked about trust, talked about communication, talked about collective responsibility, which is really, really important. And I love the whole idea of, hey, we're going to win as a team, we're going to lose as a team, we're not going to point fingers, and we're not going to beat ourselves. He made a comment, Duke doesn't beat Duke. So whatever your team is, for us it's McKinney. McKinney doesn't beat McKinney. So collective responsibility was really big. They're going to care for each other. And I feel like, in our program, we do a really good job caring for each other. And then the last thing was pride. That has always stuck with me. So those are things that, we try to, have there at our core and that we build from.
Okay. Jill.
We have 5 things, so I'll just go through them briefly, but we have attitude, hard work, heart, and then I mentioned earlier team first and excellence. And so really we saw something about the Duke men's team. This was years ago, that on the front of Sports Illustrated it said the Duke way, and it had the men's team, just, you could only see like their feet running across the court. Like, you don't know who all these people are, but they're one team. And so we changed that. At the time I was at Rockwall and it was the Lady Jacket way. And so now I'm at Sunnyvale and it's the Lady Raider way. But those are the 5 things. We sat down and said, what do we talk about all the time? And those are the 5 most important things to us. And every kid, 7th through 12th grade, knows those things. They can tell you those things: attitude, hard work, heart, team first, excellence. And we talk about one of those things every day.
Okay. Rodney.
We're talking about ours is care, commitment towards your common goals, and that goes for every drill. If we're doing a drill, they know why we're doing the drill, what the point of this drill is, what we're trying to get out of it. The A in care is for accountability on and off the court. We expect for them to be model students in the classroom. We expect for them to carry themselves the right way. If they're at the park, or if they're at an elementary school doing some reading. Respect for each other, their teammates, their parents. We expect for them to open doors for people. Say thank you, yes ma'am, yes sir. And also, when Jill mentioned this earlier about fighting for, what you've established, our last one is embracing the tradition. So once you get to a certain point and you've established your routines and your culture, we want you to, this is what we expect every single day from everybody. And if someone falls down, we expect for you to pick them up.
Okay. Amy.
Well, we talk about the 4 C's, and we constantly do, I feel like, a good job of keeping those C's in front of them, which is confidence. We talk to our kids a lot about developing true confidence, and that comes from doing the work. They've done the work. I don't want kids to get a false sense of security by comparing themselves to others. And so we set the standard. I let the kids set their expectations, their goals. And then we as a staff just kind of come behind them and hold them accountable. And so we talk a lot about having confidence. The teams that are the toughest win, point blank, period. And so this is how we develop that. Commitment obviously is time. You're talking about time. And so we measure everything from weight room to shooting drills. I mean, we time and score. This year being 5'7" and under in our starting lineup, it was going to be imperative that we shoot the 3 ball. That was how we were going to spread people out. And so we skills tested 3-point shooting twice a week, and the kids see the results. But in commitment, you're talking about time, and to encourage time and commitment, you got to measure. And so that's how we do things. Composure is another one. And so this is all your drills that you do as a coach that are odd even. It's using the heavy balls, the weighted ropes. I mean, everything that you can think of that we make it harder for them. 2-ball dribbles. I mean, where they're at a disadvantage, we're talking about, and we present it to our kids as composure. Hey, we got to get tougher. We're working on composure drills today. So we'll do a 3-on-2 drill or 2-on-3, and we make it harder than it is in games. And so, and then the last one is we cover is concentration. And those are just mental mistakes, not being all in. We talk about that a lot, whether it's execution in plays or deep half-court defenses. And so we do a lot of things to cover that. Our conditioning, we'll give them commands like sprint to the free throw line, back pedal back, sprint to the opposite free throw line, defensive slide to half court, finish, sprint it out. And we tell them 1 time. So you're working on all those things that are, late game situations, in timeouts that they're listening and they're locked in. And so we try to target all of those things every day. We present it as toughness, and that's how we try to create buy-in with our kids. So it's working. It works for us. So.
Okay. That reminded me yesterday, Coach Harris and I had a little 30-minute visit and was talking a little bit about how they built in adversity into practice, which is much what you were talking about. I think it's very important because encourage you all to listen to that whenever I get it published out. She brought some very good points. Let's talk a little bit now about how do you build that culture? And some of you talked about it a little bit in your drills, but you're obviously building your culture 24/7. So how do you build it in practice? How do you build it in your scheduling? How do you build it in your parent meeting, your banquet, off season, those different areas? Wes.
Well, starting with practice, and Amy kind of hit on this too. Practice has got to be, in a lot of ways, tougher than the games. And I would say, especially early in the year, you're more than anything, you're building mental toughness. Coach Knight coined this phrase, or at least I think he did. And I know Coach Beard out at Tech has got a tattoo of it. 4 is to 1, and talking about the mental is to the physical, as 4 is to 1 in basketball. And I think it's true. And I think that, early in the year, things have to be really, really difficult for your kids in practice. We spend a lot of time working on individual development. And we try to get them to understand that, success takes time. It's not something that we just snap our fingers just because we want something we're automatically good at. We have a real problem today with the idea of delayed gratification. We don't want to wait for good things to happen. So we really try to sell our guys on, hey man, you got to trust this process and you got to do these things every single day. And then if you do that, consistently throughout the year, then you've got a chance to be really good. We also, try to get them to embrace the idea of getting comfortable being uncomfortable. Amy mentioned, some, 2-ball drills. We do a lot of 2-ball drills. And especially when our freshmen come in, they're not very good at it at all. And it's amazing, after they've done it for about a month, how much better they are at it. But just that whole concept of getting comfortable being uncomfortable. And you got to put them in tough situations. We do try to practice as smart as we can, though. We try to be efficient with our time. We try to make our drills as relevant as we can to what we're doing, what we're trying to accomplish. Early part of the year, before we get into our actual in-season stuff, we're on the floor 5 days a week. A lot of it's individual offensive development with some individual defense in there as well, a little bit of offensive breakdown. After school, 3 days a week, we use performance course. And for us, that's a really big culture builder, because that's really where you're going to see what the buy-in level is going to be like that year, because that's one of those voluntary things. And if you've got a team where your top guys are out there every single day and they're going through the workout and they're not cheating reps and they're pushing each other, then you're going to have something pretty special. If you're having to, if it's like pulling teeth to urge kids to get out there, it's going to be an uphill battle. We were very fortunate this year that we had a group of seniors that did a great job leading the way. And we only had one senior that started every game for us this year. And he was a tremendous leader for us. That group was, I don't want to say they were short on talent, but they were far from the most talented class we've ever had come through. But they just did such a great job sacrificing, making some younger, more talented players feel important. They invested in them. And I'm going to brag on those guys real quick. I had 5 of them that were, academic all-state this year. So we're really proud of that group. But they did a great job kind of showing the way, showing what it needed to look like. As the season moves on, we talk about practicing a little bit smarter. And not everyone's like this, but we do taper things down as we get deeper into the season. We get into January, and especially closer to February, we're not going to be out on the floor that long. We're not going to be beating up on each other as much. We're not going to be putting them on a line and running them back and forth. I think we have to be sensitive to their legs. I think we have to spend a lot of time with film study, with individual skill work, getting a lot of shots up. And we sell that to them, that hey, this is the best way to go about this. And in their heads, they're probably thinking, well, why aren't we running anymore? and we have this idea that more is better all the time. But I think deep into the season, if you're banging on each other every single day and those practices are 2.5 hours long or whatever, it's the law of diminishing returns. And one thing I'm not going to ever be accused of, or at least I hope I'm not, is being stupid. And I don't want my best player to get hurt doing a blockout drill in the middle of February because some JV kid undercuts him. We got to be really, really sharp at the end of the year. So we really talk about practicing smarter, and the kids, have really bought into the way we do things. I mean, we tried to sell it to them like that. So you mentioned scheduling, and I don't know where you're going with that in terms of, if you're talking about like your actual schedule, how you schedule.
Yes.
Okay.
When I was at Wiley, I wanted my kids to see what success looked like. So we got on a bus on a Tuesday at 2:00 and drove to Waco Midway to play Linda Harding and Midway, just so we could get our ass kicked and they could see 20 district banners hanging from the ceiling and see what success and hard work looked like. So that was a particular scheduling. So yes.
And that's where I thought you were going. And I would say this, you mentioned Coach Hicks earlier, and Rodney, you worked with Stan, and Michael, you were there with him for a little bit. And when I was in Plano years ago, I saw how Stan scheduled. And he's playing Duncanville, and they had Chris Owens and Brian Boddicker and Roosevelt Brown and dudes like that. And they're playing Dunbar when Robert Hughes was the coach, and Kimball when Gorey Johnson was the head. I mean, just all these heavyweights in the non-district to get them ready for district. And when Rodney brought me up to McKinney, we were kind of doing the same thing. And we weren't really good enough to do that, though. And I made that mistake for my first 3 years as the head coach of scheduling people that we probably didn't need to schedule at the time. So I think you have to have a little bit of a balance with that. I think the kids, you have to know where you are as a program. Kids need to see that, but at some point they need to see some wins too. And I've never been one to try to schedule for wins. But I think it was our 4th year, or our 5th year. I knew we had a chance to be good. We scheduled down a little bit with one of our preseason tournaments. We started getting some momentum, and it was the first year we were really, really good. So I think there has to be a balance. As you get kids that are better, and especially kids that are going to be recruited, I think you have to try to serve them as much as you can, and put them in some showcase of, events, put them in some big time tournaments. And, we feel like, we've got a pretty good group coming back. So we have beefed up our tournament schedule for this coming year. So, but yeah, I definitely think you have to expose them to that, but there has to be a little bit of a balance as well.
Yes, sir. Amy, what about, could you maybe just focus on maybe your end of year, banquet type thing? Do you use that for culture?
Yeah, it just highlights our kids and the goals. Everything is driven from within. They set their goals, and we acknowledge that. We actually do it daily. We spotlight each other, where if they see one of our character traits that we're trying to emulate, they get to spotlight. I think Coach Belcher mentioned that. And so we do those things daily. Highlights, obviously, yes. We've got some kids getting some postseason accolades. All of those things. But yes, that's a time to come together and really celebrate the season, and acknowledge the kids for the adversity that they overcame. You start getting to know their stories, their personal stories. Their struggles, and we just get to come together with their families, their parents, and it's really cool how it all comes together, how the families come together, just to support the kids. So, but yes, that's a huge piece, because that's when they really get recognized for their.
Do you have any other areas of maybe the off season or during practice where you build culture that you'd like to talk about real quick?
Well, I'm big on goal setting. And we talk about what these kids want to get accomplished, who they want to become, career paths. We do that now during the off season. Obviously, as far as basketball goes, everything in this phase is about player development. So we're really working fundamentals hard, footwork hard. We're not doing a lot of team stuff right now. I don't push the AAU stuff with my kids, so we do play usually in one spring. I have different thoughts on that, and so that's about the only playing they really get. But I feel like we've closed a lot of performance gaps by hammering the fundamentals during this phase. And then we do a lot of internal work as far as what are the kids' goals, getting to know what those kids' goals are and how we can assist them. And so we spend a lot of individual time with the kids during that. And I because they know we have their best interests at heart, like I feel like they buy into our culture and why it's important. So.
Okay. Jill?
You know, one thing that we've kind of changed, I read a book where a guy was saying, you know, everybody should know your pillars or your words, and you should come up with hand signals for those. So we came up with hand signals for our 5 words. And so because of that, it makes it easy in a practice. You know, if I think somebody's having a bad attitude, for example, our attitude sign is just this. I can look at them and do that, like check your attitude from across the gym, and they're going to know what that means. So, you know, I can think of one example this year. Our point guard, she looked like she had a bad attitude at the start of practice. So I do that to her, and she still kind of looks grumpy and still kind of looks like she has a bad attitude. So I walk over to her goal and say, hey, what's going on? You look, and she's like, nothing. Well, you look like you have a bad attitude. And she said, well, I don't. And I said, well, then fix how you're looking, you know, because you look like it and everybody looks to you. So then a few minutes later, she's still kind of looking that way. And so I went over and said, you're going to have to fix this, or you're going to end up in my office with me having a meeting. You know, it's just, you have to, like I said earlier, just confront those things and be willing to do that. And I'm not afraid to have some of that awkwardness sometimes of, no, this is the way it's going to be in here. So we came up with those hand signs, and we also came up with emojis to match those. And so when we're texting kids or when I'm talking to them, there's an emoji for all of them, and there's a hand sign for all of them. And we use that. And then even you mentioned the parent meeting. In the parent meeting, all I do is go over those 5 words. And I say, here's what we tell the kids about having a good attitude. Here's what I would ask of you with regards to having a good attitude, you know, and then here's what we say to the kids about hard work, but here's what we need from you during the season for hard work, and just go through all of those 5 things for kids and for adults as well. And at the end of the year, like I said, team first is important to us. So we have a team first award, and that's usually a kid that doesn't get to play all that much, but that always just put the team first and did something for the team throughout the year. So we can recognize that as well.
I always felt like that parent meeting at the beginning of the year and the banquet served as an opportunity to build your culture with that group. And honestly, building culture within my parent group seemed to be where I failed. So Rodney, you're getting ready to start building culture. We were talking a little bit earlier, you're under the gun with the way we are right now. So tell me a little bit about that.
Well, the challenge, it's going to be very challenging in the situation that I'm in, but it's going to be a fun challenge. I'm excited about the opportunity. We're playing, and I don't know if you guys know that Sooner Athletic Conference, we NAIA. And when they hired me, they said, Coach, you're starting with 0, with nothing. And I said, well, my whole life I've started with nothing in terms of where I grew up in Waco. But the part of the challenge and the fun part of is what we do. We work with young people. We use basketball as a tool to build character, to build core values and build character. And so in the recruiting process, using people like the people who are a part of this, calling friends, looking for young ladies who have great character, who focus on their academics and you know, to try to give them opportunity to continue playing the game that they love, basketball, and work on getting a degree. So it's going to be a fun challenge. There's a lot of talent in this Dallas-Fort Worth area, but also outside of what I'm finding out is there are a lot of young ladies outside of this area who want to, you know, they would like to come to the Dallas area. They've heard about UNT Dallas and the women's basketball program. They want to continue playing. They understand that academics are the expectations of doing well is very high. And for the most part, that's what they're going to have to lean on to come in there and to play. As far as so the opportunity, I'm excited about the opportunity. I'm gonna need all you guys' help. We're gonna use some of the same things that we're discussing now to build our character and build the culture of our program.
Well, I think any young lady that has a chance to come and play under you will be blessed. I know that. So let's all of you guys, all you coaches, whether you've been to the state tournament or not, you coach your teams and you maintain a high level year in, year out. And that's obviously because of your culture. What's your biggest challenge to maintaining that high level year in and year out? And do you ever feel like you put too much pressure on your kids trying to build that culture, I guess? Sometimes I felt like maybe I pushed mine to the edge when I opened up with Duncanville, Skyline, Mesquite Horn, some of those type of teams, but I thought it was best. So I want to speak a little on that. Jill, could you start off on that?
Well, I certainly at times have put a little too much pressure, maybe, you know, on myself, honestly. And this year I was able to really step back and see. It was really, we thought this year was going to be a great year, and our goal was really to go to the state tournament and the regional tournament. And we lost in the third round, and somehow it made it okay, because when I walked in that locker room, in my 20 years of coaching varsity basketball, I've never seen anything like it. They were all just, I mean, every single person was just, I don't even know how to explain it, just completely wrecked, you know, just emotionally, we were all just so upset. And I've never gotten really, really emotionally upset after the last game. Usually I'm so mad and so upset at the end. And I just couldn't even speak. And we all just sat there and wept and hugged each other. And when it was done, my husband and I have talked through this. Somehow I feel like our culture was so good and we loved each other so much this year. I loved this team so much that it made it to where in the end, I'm like, you know what? This ended up, I don't know if that makes sense or answers your question, but this year, because of that and the way it ended, and it just looked like we love each other. I loved this team. I loved every kid on there, and it made it fulfilling and okay, even when the ending wasn't where we wanted it to be.
I think that's a perfect answer, because it speaks to true culture. Your culture is not based on wins. It's based on growth, and your kids obviously knew they grew, you know, over the years. So Rodney, how about you?
You know, kind of going back to the question before and building and maintaining the culture, we do a lot of, you know, in practice, we do a lot of competition drills. And our competition drills, I never, unless we're working on team stuff, which we don't do a lot of the 5-on-5 situation stuff, and I know Wes mentioned this earlier about conditioning and running. We don't just run to run. Everything we do is with the basketball, is trying to improve our basketball skills. And, you know, every day when we do different competition drills, 2-2, 3-on-3, we always have different captains. So we can establish that culture, that family culture, that everybody on the team is important. There's no one more important than the other. When we do 4-on-4 competition, every day I'll already have set who's going to be the captains today. So everybody has the opportunity to be the captain, choose their teams, and we compete. That culture, that family culture, that everybody. Another thing we like to do to establish that culture and make sure that it's over and over, and Wes talked about this a little bit as far as scheduling. When I first got to Plano, the first thing I did was take the TABC listing, and our name wasn't on that top 25. And what I mean by that is typically the people who do the rankings, they have the 25 names in there. And I put it in the locker room, and I said, well, we're going to have to establish, and the culture was already established because the young ladies, they care about each other. We have high character young ladies are, you know, as far as academic go, it's, you know, excellence. In Plano, they talk about excellence all the time, especially in academics. And I said, well, we're going to do the same thing in basketball with our basketball program. As a matter of fact, this is honors basketball. So they talk about their class. I said, when you go to English, we expect your teachers in English, their honors English class, this is honors basketball. And so that's how we're going to approach it. And our name wasn't on there. So we started establishing that culture right there. When you walk into basketball in this class, everybody's for each other. We expect for you to be on time, be prepared, come with the right mindset. And I like the hand signals that Jill talked about having. That's pretty cool. And Wes talked about this with scheduling. We tried to schedule the toughest games as we could. As a matter of fact, we played Duncanville every chance I got until we figured out how to beat them. But last year, and this goes back to what you mentioned also, whenever we would go and play in that Duncanville tournament, to me, after being off for 5 days, I just like Jill's talking about the love that she had for her players and how they loved each other. Well, I kind of feed off of my players. Even in practice, if we're working, I can kind of tell if I need to pull back or keep going. So I make sure that I pay close attention to that. Well, they didn't necessarily, to me, that tournament, the Sandra Meadows tournament is to me mentally draining for them. So we went to Cedar Park, and we played in a tournament that the talent pool wasn't as competitive, but I knew that they just wanted to have fun, get away from the area. There was an Australian team there. To me, that was probably one of the most productive things that we did for the entire year. And I felt like that brought our team together. After the game, we played the Australian team. The young ladies, they sat in a circle. They sang together. And I thought, how cool is this? I thought that was very important in knowing, feeling the attitude and the bloodline of your players. That's important.
Okay. Amy.
Well, I have a couple things, I guess, here that it's kind of our program's facing. More and more kids are wanting to start to play college ball. And as they set those goals for themselves, and we get to share that amongst our team, and I think it's interesting because of social media. I'm going to social media. How do you keep and protect the culture of your team when you know these kids and the way that recruiting culture is they got to get their stat lines out there. They got to get their as much recognition as possible, and to be able to balance that. And without it hurting, your team concept and your team, and balancing that. And so again, I think that goes back to goal setting and really getting to know each other and those relationships that we build and what we're trying to get to. And then also promoting kids, team, and I've struggled with it. It has been a struggle. But once you get to know your kids and what their actual goals are and how you can help them, then you got to start helping them the best you can. And so I think that's a big struggle that we all face right now is kind of balancing that, those kids that you have that want to go on and play at the next level, and the exposure. As far as ranking and stuff, I feel like sometimes I've had teams that have been ranked very, very high, and it gave them a false sense of security. I've had teams not even on the radar, and they end up better than some of those ranked teams. And so we talk again about that true confidence, which is why we're doing the work. We evaluate games as far as the games within the game. And so we got beat on composure tonight. We got beat on because we lost the turnover battle, or the free throw game, or all those little intangible things that you evaluate, your stat lines that you use. And so it was a composure issue. Well, how can we fix that? Or it was a concentration issue. We had too many missed assignments, missed screens, missed blockouts, whatever you hold your kids to. And so we use all of that. So in scheduling, we try to schedule. My first 2 years we were in district with DeSoto, Duncanville, Cedar Hill, South Grand Prairie, all the powerhouses down south. Then we dropped the next 2 years to 5A and go in with the Mansfields. And, Kid at Timberview, the success she's had, and all those coaches over there, we're just in a hotbed where I'm at. And so to be competitive, obviously you've got to expose them to those situations. But you can't let it define them and let that scoreboard define them. And so we try to talk about our toughness. Where did we get beat, or why were we successful? Hey, we won this, this, and this. And the more you can check off your list, for us, our toughness, it all feeds into the same machine. And so with us, the recruiting, the way that world is set up right now, for kids getting to the next level, and the promotions that they have to do to reach that, and having me personally being able to experience coaching at a high level, major D1, then being a high school coach, being an AAU coach, and getting to see and how you can best guide your kids to help them reach their goals. And so I think that's a big challenge that sometimes I struggle with as well.
All right. And Wes, I'm going to ask you, I consider your teams always are at a high level. I would never want to go against any of your teams. But I know you bounce back and forth between 5A and 6A, and whichever district you've gone into, it's been one of the toughest 5A or 6A boys districts. I know that for a fact because I was on the girls' side watching it usually. But so just share for a minute how you feel you maintain that high level. What challenges do you face to doing that?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I wasn't really expecting that one. It is one I've talked about a lot, though, to colleagues. That bouncing back and forth, and usually when we would go back up, we were going back up with a very, very low enrollment number, especially relative to the teams we were going into the district with. So that was really, really difficult. I remember the last time, we've been in 6A for, I guess, 4 or 5 straight years now, but the last time we went up, I guess, in 2012, 2013, and the previous 2 years, we were pretty good in what is now 5A. And I thought we had, for the first time ever, I thought we had a chance to be really good at that top classification. And I thought we had a regional tournament level team at what was 4A at the time. and I thought we'd be able to get in the playoffs. And we had a really good pre-district. We beat some of the top, 4A teams in the state early in the year in some tournaments. And then we rolled into district, and man, it was just a completely different animal. We got humbled. It was really difficult. So, we were pretty good that year, but we didn't get in. And then the next year we weren't really good. And that was a real struggle. This is the 13-14 season. And, one of the things when we've had those years where we've struggled, we're not going to get in. One of the things we've always taken pride in, or I've tried to take pride in, is, hey, we're going to play really hard. And people are going to respect us regardless. And I just remember, and I don't know if Clarkson's on here or not, and he had a really good team that year. We went into Plano East, and we were overmatched. But man, I did not like our effort that. Now, I did not like the way we finished that year out. And there's been one other year like that where I just did not like the taste in my mouth at the end of it all. So we had to go back to the drawing board and just kind of rebuild the whole thing because we weren't where we needed to be from a culture standpoint. There was one year when Matt Saman was with me as an assistant. Our first year we had a lot of success. The next year we had a group coming back that I think they just assumed we were going to be good because we had been good for a while, and we were pretty complacent in that. And I think one of the things you have to do is to make sure your kids understand, because I certainly understand, because I've been beaten a lot. You can't take anything for granted. You can't take success for granted, because I've certainly been on the far other end of that. My first few years in McKinney, especially. But I know I'm kind of rambling here, but I just, in terms of guarding against that, and in terms of maintaining, your culture, I think the biggest challenge is you got a different group from year to year. And regardless of your classification, it's a different group from year to year. So some of the things we do at the end of every year, we interview all of our players, seniors, ask them, hey, what went well? What would you like about it? What you not like about it? What would you have done differently? And we try to get feedback from them. Then we go to our, kids that are going to be returning to us, kind of ask them a lot of the same questions. Hey, what do you need to do to get better? What do we need to do to get better? How do you want to be coached? How can we help you be most successful? I encourage our coaches to be very, very honest with me. I don't want a bunch of yes men. And then we take all that feedback that we get from those meetings, and then we kind of, rechart our course. And so we'll sit the kids down at the beginning of the spring and say, hey, look, this is what we talked about. This is the feedback we've gotten. And I think it gives them some ownership, because they've, given a lot of that feedback. And then so we kind of refocus our mission and reboot ourselves and get ourselves back on the right track.
Okay. All right. We're going to do one more question before we do that. Thanks to East Bay again. I don't know if Brent made it on. Taz is still on the call, so appreciate you, Taz. We did do the drawing, and Courtney Greenwalt is the winner of that backpack. So I know Courtney, so we'll figure out.
Hey man, thanks for letting me on. Enjoyed it. Everybody's been awesome. Can you shoot me her information? I'll get that to Brent, and we'll take care of her on that.
We'll get it to you.
All right. Thanks, man.
All right. Appreciate you, Taz. All right. So the last question I want to finish up with is, all of you are 20 plus years in the profession. So my question on the last one is going to be, has your culture changed? And if it has, in what way? And then, or has it stayed the same and you just delivering it different? Does that make sense? Rodney, I'll start with you. Has your culture changed, or just the way you're delivering it to your program now?
The culture surely hasn't changed. My approach has changed. I coached boys for 15 years, and then I've done girls now for 17 years. And every year, the approach has gotten better and better at, the way that I go about doing certain things and trying to get over to my players what I want them to understand. So the culture's the same. The approach is surely different. When I first started coaching young ladies and they started crying, I didn't know what to do because I had coached boys for so long. So I would have to go to my assistant coaches and ask them, what are you doing in this situation? Because I didn't know. And then I realized over the years, it was the approach. And so I try to make sure I establish that the way I present information and in the proper way. And so I've learned over the years that's made a big difference in the success or lack of success of our program, but the approach has surely changed.
Cool. Amy.
My approach has definitely not changed, and I think it's because I've matured as a coach. I think early on, your focus is you think you're going to go out and set the world on fire and become this great all-American coach, and you get caught up. And I'm really big on my soapbox about comparison and comparing yourself, your team to other people. And even my kids, and we acknowledge, every day we're talking about, hey, man, you got a gift. You got a gift of being 6'2", or this year for me, we had to capitalize on our speed. And so, because we were 5'7" and under. And so for us, it's big, and we try to present it. It's not about being better than, it's about getting better at. And so that's how we develop that true confidence. And we try really, really hard to keep that our focus. Like, we won this game because of these things. Well, the next game we lose or we win, it may be something completely different in our evaluation that, man, we got to put it all together, and it's funny how it plays out throughout the season. But for us, those are our focus. And, this year we lost my leading scorer, averaging 26, 4 games into the season. And so it took us a little while. We weren't really on people's radars, I don't think, after that happened. And the kids stepped up. They embraced toughness. They embraced their roles. Because we measure everything, they understand, hey, you got a green light to shoot, you don't. Like, they start buying in because it's that whole Mike Neighbors, green light shooting, where you can define it for them. You don't have parents and everybody saying, well, my kids should shoot it. My kids should be able to. Well, we're skills testing them. They get a chance to prove themselves. Until they reach this level, then, here we go. But that's how we create buy-in, and that's kind of how we handle those things, and how we try to keep it out in front and present it to our parents and to our kids, that it's always about getting better at, and then helping these kids reach their goals. Not all of my kids want to go play Division I basketball. I got kids getting academic scholarships, full rides. Those are the type of kids that I'm dealing with. And so, yes, my approach has changed, to get back to your answer. And I think that's more of me maturing as a coach and really understanding what's really important. And so I've been able to personally define those things for me in my career. And so just trying to keep those at the forefront.
Okay. Wes.
I think, the overall foundation has stayed the same. I have probably in some ways gotten softer as I've gotten older. I'm probably not as quick to judge. I've seen players change for the better, and and I've got this part about me that believes that they can change. but there are times when you may have a kid that really challenges your culture. Maybe he's in areas of character, emotional stability, things like that. He undermines a lot of the things that you're trying to accomplish, and I've erred on the side of investing in the kid, and in looking back, sometimes it's been to our detriment, maybe. So I've gotten a little bit. I guess I've gotten a little bit softer on some things, and I think that's why it's really important that you trust your assistant coaches and you respect what they have to say. And at the end of every year, you reevaluate some of the decisions you made. I know that this kind of plays into a little bit about culture, but we made a pretty drastic change in our style of play about, I don't know, it's been 10 years now, 10 years ago, when Matt Simon was with me. We just felt like, I loved the way we used to play, and I felt like I did a pretty good job selling our kids on, hey, this is the way to play basketball. But as the talent level and the skill set of our kids changed, I felt like it was in their best interest, or we felt like it was in their best interest for us to kind of change and to mold our style around what they were really good at. And what we've been doing here recently, we feel like it's a pretty easy sell, so that's I think that's a big part of our culture. I think that's our style of play. I think it's a fun style for kids. I think we really promote individual development. We don't get real complicated in terms of our schemes on offense. We just try to get them really skilled and let them go out and be basketball players. And so I think that's been an easier sell, rather than me going and telling them why it's so important to do motion breakdown drills every day in the spring and how to come off screens. And we still do a little bit of that from time to time, but what we're doing now, I think, is more, at least for us, it's an easier sell for our kids. So yeah, I've tried to adapt a little bit through the years, but in terms of that core, what we're going to build everything on, it's pretty much stayed the same.
Okay. And so, Jill, I'm going to turn the question a little bit on you in this current situation we're in. I could see program culture slipping a little bit because we're not with our kids every day, and those types of things. So I looked at your PowerPoint, and I know you're doing some things with your kids in this virtual world. So I think it'd be all of our benefits to hear just a little bit about that.
Sure. I'll just briefly go over, but basically, I have 3 returning seniors, 3 girls that'll be seniors next year, and then a girl that was one of our best players this year. So I had four leaders, and I divided up all of our girls that are going into 10th, 11th, and 12th grade next year and put them in what they call pods, PODS. So every Monday morning, I am getting on Zoom and meeting with these pod leaders. It's 4 girls. And I'm telling them, okay, here's your goal for the week. And so it's one thing is just kind of a challenge of the week. This week, it is called the Happy 5 Challenge. So for this week, they're just supposed to, Monday through Friday, find something that makes them happy and take a picture of it. And I have a Google Classroom set up, and it's actually an assignment this week. It says a Happy 5, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. They go in and they just put a picture of something that makes them happy. Last week, it was do something nice challenge. They had to do something nice for somebody, and take a picture of that. Next week, we're going to make it where it's something that you do something selfless for someone. So anyway, there's a challenge. There's also a ball handling challenge. So they post their best on a certain ball handling thing. And then there's a, did you work out, and there's a workout. So I meet with those leaders, and I keep up with those leaders every single day. I check in with those 4 people. That's not overwhelming to me. So I text message those kids, hey, this is what's these were the goals for everybody today. And by the end of the day, they'll send to me, my pod was 100% today. My pod was 60% today, that kind of thing. But I'm checking in on those 4. And then on Thursdays, we have a leadership meeting. That's this afternoon, where I'm presenting a leadership lesson to them. Today is on respect yourself and others. And we're going to talk about how you can do that. And so every week we've had just something that we've talked about, and everybody's together on that one. And then my middle school coach, Coach Gunner, she'll go in and she presents that to all of our middle schoolers the next week. So today at 2, they're having a meeting, all the 7th and 8th graders, on what we talked about last week. And so this week, our ball handling challenge, they can either do a certain one that we found on Twitter, or they can do a TikTok, just a TikTok with a basketball, just to have something fun kind of put in there. But really and truly, we're doing this I want to see their faces and just to try to keep them connected. I want them to be connected to each other. They're checking in with their pod all the time. And for us to stay connected, and it's a lot of culture stuff. What I'm presenting, it has nothing to do with basketball at all. It's just leadership and culture things. And honestly, that's my favorite part of my job is culture and leadership. And so that's what I'm presenting every week.
Beautiful. I personally think this is a great time to reach those kids, in those areas. So I'm just going to leave you guys with this. Something I heard the other day was basically, how we show up right now in this time period is how people are going to see us showing up, in 4 months. So if we're not here now for our players, me for my clients, then, they're not going to, expect me to be there in 4 months when this is over. And I think it's a great time for you to build your culture and use these new tools, because kids, this is how we reach them anyway. So I would just try to be that tree that's out in your front yard, that no matter how hard the wind blows, no matter what it rains, no matter what direction you come home from, that tree is always there. It's always standing the same way. And that's how I think our athletes need to see us, always the same, that steady tree. So I appreciate all you guys. We're going to do another one next Thursday. Wes, Jill, Amy, Rodney, appreciate you guys. You brought so much value. All of you that joined the call, thanks again. Love doing this. It's good for my heart and soul. I hope it's bringing some value to you guys. So appreciate it. Courtney, we'll get you your backpack. Thanks, East Bay. Appreciate all y'all again.
Thanks for having us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Michael, thanks for doing this, man. It's been great. I love those first 2 weeks, and the coaches that I was on the panel with today were just outstanding. So thank y'all so much.
Appreciate y'all.
Hey, can I say one more thing before
Yes, sir, Rob.
we check out? In practice every day, and I didn't say this earlier, there are certain terms that we use all the time, and it has nothing to do with your ability. But every day in practice, when we're going through our drills, and all of the players kind of echo this, it's you're good at, when they make a good play, you're good at, you're valued, and we established this at the very beginning of the year in the meetings that we value everybody in our program. And thank you for. We always say that, thank you for, you're good at, you're valued, and I mean, we touch each other so much, high-fiving. We spend a lot of time doing that. So thank you guys. You guys are great. And I've learned so much today just listening to you guys for over this hour. And I appreciate it. I appreciate you guys and what you do. Thank you.
All right. You guys have a good one. We'll see you next week.
Thank you.